You're going in the synth. Nice. It's day 1 of trying to build all my guitar pedals into the Serum 2 effects rack. It's day 2, it's day 3, it's day 4. Serum 2 is by far my favorite synthesizer, as you can see from our catalog of noise department products, but Serum 2 is missing something important that its rival Phase Plant already has. You see, Kilohertz offers 2 modules called Snap Heap and Multipass, both of which allow you to bundle a bunch of effects together into a nice, self-contained unit. When you're inside Phase Plant, you can load up one of these modules and select a preset, and it looks like a single effect in your chain with a couple of knobs, but it's really any number of effects just abstracted away from your view. Serum 2, unfortunately, doesn't have anything like that. You get 3 effects lanes, and yeah, there are a few parallel splitters, but everything sort of lives on the top level. A sneaky side effect of this is that designers like myself won't even make an attempt to create abstractions. The workflow is usually 1. Mess around on the oscillator page, 2. Do LFO and envelope stuff, 3. Make it sound cooler by adding effects from the dropdown. Add a distortion, add a reverb, add an OTT. Okay, done. Save it. But last year, I couldn't help but think that Serum's lack of abstraction tools like Snap Heap was causing me to miss out on an entire category of sound design. The kind where the effects you use define the flavor of the end result far more than the source material does. Look at this Boss heavy metal pedal, for example. Everything you run through it sounds like the heavy metal pedal. It's not enhancing the sound, it's redefining the sound.
Check. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so this is the HM2 pedal. You get what I'm trying to say? Everything sounds like the HM2 pedal.
And what's inside that pedal? Well, there's diodes and filters and EQ stuff at the very least. You could say that a guitar pedal is an abstraction. It's the physical equivalent of Snap Heap. Serum has been, and probably will be, one of the most popular soft synths of all time, and it's already very good at like 99% of synth-related things, but that last 1%, the missing abstraction stuff, it's a very big 1%. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to show you how I overcame that limitation and gave Serum the power of guitar pedal distortion using its own internal effects. You'll be hearing some audio demos which are presets straight out of our newest pack called Maximum Overdrive, so you can certainly pick that up if you want to harness this power for yourself. Let's begin by looking at Serum's effects page. The devices are single-purpose and modular. The chorus is just a chorus. The compressor just compresses. The distortion effects distort. And you get to choose from one of a number of flavors like tube, linear fold, tape, etc. But what Serum doesn't tell you is that all of these effects are like parts of a car. What you really want is to build the whole car, but each instance of distortion, EQ, filtering, it's like one wheel, one mirror, one headlight. To build the car, you need to combine all the parts together into a car shape. Just to hammer that home, the distortion options Serum gives you are atomic, singular distortion stages, 1 diode, 1 tube, 1 soft clipper. This detail is important, and let me show you why. We're going to jump out of Serum for a sec and look at a circuit diagram of a simple guitar pedal. This is for the Ibanez TS9 Tube Screamer. I know this is hieroglyphics to many of you, but the takeaway is that not only is there a distortion stage, but there's stuff happening before and after that distortion stage. For example, this Electro Smash article writes, harmonics above 720 Hz get the full gain of the distortion stage, and everything below it gets progressively less gain and distortion. Bass notes are clipped least, so the distortion is frequency selective. In Serum's distortion module, you can see that I can add a pre-distortion high-pass filter like this. But it's pretty crude, and I prefer to use either a dedicated EQ so I can do something drastic like this, or if I want to go very subtle, perhaps I'll use the 6 dB per octave filter. But anyway, before I go too far in the weeds, if I were to try to build an effects chain which sounds like a guitar pedal, like the Tube Screamer for example, I'll need to start adding effects modules in the spirit of that circuit diagram. That is to say, I'll need to add a lot of effects modules. As I keep adding devices, I'm continuously checking how the waveform looks if I run a sine wave through it. In addition, if I own the guitar pedal for real, I'm constantly checking how the sound and the waveform compare using an A-B splitter thing in Ableton Live. Kinda looks like this. The The more time I spent trying to match guitar pedal sounds in Serum, the more I began to notice fundamental differences between audio processing in Serum land versus real electricity land. First of all, the biggest challenge was managing gain staging inside of Serum. The dynamic range of audio would be squashed so flat, so quickly that it pushed Serum into sounding artificial and rigid compared to what the actual hardware would do. It took a lot of effort and a lot of utility devices to open up that range in a satisfying way, but we got there. The second biggest challenge was about biasing. In other words, asymmetric clipping, where one side of the signal is distorted more than the other. You see, Serum's X-shaper is very flexible, but it quietly applies a DC offset filter immediately after the wave shaping happens. This is great for casual use when you don't want to worry about that stuff, but when designing distortion chains, it ruins any chances of carrying that asymmetry further down the line to be processed by other stuff. There's no way to remove or disable that filter, but some extremely pixel-perfect X-shaper curves can get you to a result that sounds close enough that you just forget about it. Lastly, it's well known that a lot of analog gear will handle transients in a sluggish or otherwise non-linear fashion. Transients being big spikes in volume, drum hits, etc. This property of hardware was nearly impossible to model in Serum, but by using more wave shapers, compressors, or a combination of both, I clawed my way up to a passable emulation of that behavior. And at the end of the day, my goal wasn't to nail it exactly, because that would be unrealistic, but I did want to make sure that they all sound tasty on everything from drums to synths to vocals and more.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So let's say I like the sound of this collection of effects and I want to save it. There's no module like Snap Heap, but what Serum does have is effects rack presets. I can click the disk icon, save the rack, and then if I want to recall that bundle of effects, I can do that from the drop-down menu. It's a bummer that it eats an entire effects bus, but we made a full pack of presets for noise department using these racks, and it really didn't cause too much of an issue. In fact, at the end of this process, I ended up with 12 different effects rack distortion presets, 7 of which were modeled after physical units that are on my desk sitting right next to me. To get more of a Snap Heap experience, I set up Serum to load the effects buses in series by default instead of parallel. In bus 1, I do any of my pre-distortion stuff, and in the main bus, I do all of my post-distortion stuff, leaving bus 2 as the place where I flip through effects rack presets. Put all of those things together, and you end up with a very mean-sounding Serum. At this point, some of you are probably still asking, why not just use the real pedals and stuff? Why bother doing all of this in Serum? And the first answer is workflow. It turns out, at least for sound design anyway, that the fewer windows you have to swap between, the faster you get to something satisfying, and the faster you move on to the next task in the project. Second, Serum does everything in stereo, which is not a luxury you get if you only have one of a guitar pedal. There was a point where I was buying my modular effects and guitar pedals in pairs to have that stereo effects loop, and boy, that was not sustainable. Finally, and most importantly, it makes the guitar pedal shareable. Like, I can put the whole chain into a Serum preset where you can load it up on your computer and get that awesome distorted sound without needing to buy or download anything else. I think that's the most valuable part. If you own Serum 2, you can grab these effects racks and all the presets in the Maximum Overdrive pack over on the Noise Department website. However, I will say that this one is a little bit pricier than our other ones, and that has everything to do with the amount of time it took to make something like this. But if you do pick it up, I think that you'll like it. It's unlike any preset pack you've ever bought. Alright, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and take care.